we had a great chance to join James Enstall over on the Geek to Me radio podcast and do a little talking about the DC fandom. Check out our chat and make sure you check out the full episode in a link down below.
This is Lucy Davis. I play Etta Candy in Wonder Woman, and this is Geek to Me Radio. Come and listen. We're very, very nice.
Welcome back to the show, friends. We're glad you're still with us. DC Fandome went down last weekend. It was a huge event. I watched all I could. It was a lot to take in. We got a lot of great trailers. And I needed someone I could talk to kind of break it down, kind of weigh my thoughts, hear somebody else's thoughts, because it was overload. So luckily, our friends over at Comic Book Nostalgia, Louis Spahn, he agreed to have a chat with us about his impressions and his thoughts. Right now, we're doing some DC Fandome wrap-up talk, kind of looking at the event, how things went from just the average fan's perspective. And right now, we're talking with one of my favorite Twitter buddies, Louis Spahn. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for taking the time. At CB Nostalgia is the handle on Twitter, and you do a lot of great stuff on YouTube. You're always amazing me. I don't know if you sleep or you just constantly do YouTube. I don't know.
Thanks. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So
no sleep here.
The DC Fandom was a huge event, a lot to take in. It was almost like overload with all the movie stuff, the comic news they announced, the different panels they had. What were your biggest impressions of the event?
Well, I got to say, man, overall, I really think that DC really stole the hype train. It's been Marvel on the front side for a pretty long time. And, you know, there's a ton of DC fans out there. And actually, I'd probably do more DC videos than Marvel stuff. But it just seemed like Marvel was in the driver's seat, especially with that big box office last year, right?
Yeah.
And this just has totally changed the conversation in social media, at least for a couple of weeks. And I really think that's probably the biggest thing that DC is going to take away from it. I do have to say, all the disappointment of splitting it into 2 weekends now kind of has a little better reflection, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree. That was something that I was kind of surprised by, that they decided to redo it. But like I said, I almost felt overwhelmed at one point. So I'm kind of glad they gave us a week or two off to kind of process before we dive into the next phase.
Absolutely. There's no way that, especially the smaller stuff, would have been completely overshadowed by all the trailers. I mean, James Gunn blew us away. The Wonder Woman trailer blew us away. And people are still talking about the Batman. I probably watched that trailer about 30 times. So I don't know how anything else would have gotten traction. You know, things like Young Justice. That was one of the panels I was looking forward to that got moved.
Yeah, and I loved some of the stuff that a lot of people didn't initially just talk about, because obviously the big shiny stuff kind of took precedent, but Milestone coming back. They had that panel with Dennis Cowan and with Phil Lamar talking about bringing the Milestone, Static Shock hardware, all those back. And Jim Lee was on the panel as well, said, yeah, we're going to do basically a reprint of some of these items. They're going to do some trades, and then we're going to relaunch it. And Dennis looked thrilled, which I was so happy for him, since he's one of the people who helped create this universe.
I was pretty happy to hear that coming back. And if I understand right, they were talking about some other media projects too. I don't know if they meant animated or live action, but clearly they're taking this and they're going to run full bore with it.
Yeah, I believe they were talking about Static Shock. It was a little unclear. Like I said, I'm trying to multitask and I'm trying to tweet and do other stuff during the panel. So I wasn't sure if they meant another animated series for Static, or if they mean like a live action Static Shock movie, which either way would be great, but I would love to see it live action.
I think Static's almost made for live action.
Yeah.
I mean, the effects and everything's just perfect. That would be great.
And then obviously Wonder Woman trailer. I'm a big Suicide Squad fan of the Ostrander run, and James Gunn said it right there. This movie is basically an extension or a continuation of that run of comics, because he's a big fan too, which made me feel even better about this movie being helmed by Gunn with such an incredible cast.
You know, when the first movie came out, I really felt like they were looking to Guardians of the Galaxy, and like, you know, that's the tone that they wanted, but it's not what they filmed, right? And this goes into that whole haircut thing. But I think James Gunn is probably the perfect director to take on this in the tone that they're doing. I mean, he made Polka Dot Man look cool.
With some help from David Desmalchin, of course.
Wow, the whole visual on all that was just great. I mean, you know, and I don't think there's probably anybody, like I said, who's better matched to it. And I was curious they didn't give us a full trailer, but once again, I think, to your point, it was probably not to completely overwhelm us. I would think that they would be done by now, but I think there's some strategy in that too.
Definitely. Obviously, COVID having pushed everything back to the box office, we should have already seen Wonder Woman 84 by this time. And just to get the trailer was great. And I think a lot of people were surprised by Batman because the initial reports with Robert Pattinson being attached was like, he's not the right guy. But people said the same thing when Daniel Craig was cast as James Bond, going all the way back to when Michael Keaton was cast as Batman. So I always like to withhold judgment. But I think the trailer helped kind of sway a lot of people into, okay, this might be something good, Camp.
I think you're right. I always thought that reaction to him was a little overblown, and I think it was probably fueled a little bit by loyalty to Ben Affleck's version of Batman and some of the controversy associated with that. With that said, I think they gave us the exact right amount of what we needed to see. I mean, obviously they didn't have a lot filmed, and might have actually made the trailer better. We only got just a little bit of everything. We didn't get too much Batman. It wasn't too involved, but clearly, when you saw what they were shooting before, and then we got to see what was in the trailer, we could totally tell where they were working, and it was all coming from the same general area.
Yeah.
So, and I think the naysayers on Pattinson they've been pretty off the whole time. I mean, yeah, we can pick on him about Twilight all day long, but honestly, if you look at all the rest of his other work, the guy is incredible.
Yeah, he does. He's a solid actor for sure, and people have grown past their initial stuff. We don't still give Tom Hanks crap about bosom buddies at this point. So
exactly,
let him grow as an actor and kind of appreciate what he's done since then.
And for the record, I love bosom buddies.
Who doesn't? I mean, the Billy Joel song alone was worth turning it on for every week. What else did you take away from DC as far as the panels, the movie trailer? Obviously, you have the same feeling that I do, that they're moving in a very positive direction. I know that I was a little apprehensive because they just announced the week before massive layoffs at DC Comics. So I was kind of like, I feel weird celebrating this, but by the end of it, it was an amazing time. I mean, it was just a lot of great stuff thrown at us. But what was your overall impression, takeaway, and what impressed you the most?
I think there's some clear intent of AT&T and Warner Brothers listening to the fans, and that seems to be the big thing that's changed. Obviously the Zack Snyder Justice League was a big response to fan demand, and don't get me wrong, I think HBO Max played huge into that, and so. But I think clearly now there's somebody over there listening to the fans that didn't really appear to be there before. I'm not really sure who that is, but I just have that vibe from everything.
Yeah.
It's almost like fan service. Fan service has become something important, and I don't know if they're taking lessons from what Kevin Feige does or taking that and trying to run with it in their own way. But, I mean, obviously you have to listen to the fans to get things right.
Right, and there's the whole two mindsets, because we have obviously we've seen it pop up with the Snyder Cut people. We've seen it pop up in Star Wars. There is a toxic group of fans out there, and depending on which camp you're in, the other side's toxic. But it's you want to make sure that you're listening to kind of the general fans, but you don't want to get bogged down in, well, we want this. No, we want this. So that's kind of a fine line for anybody to walk, be it Kevin Feige or whoever's over at DC now and Warner Brothers who's in charge of that. It's kind of an interesting time as far as fans go. I never felt like there was this toxicity before, I'm going to say 2008, 9.
Yeah, there's something that's definitely happened in the fandom, and I think DC has a different problem versus maybe what Marvel has potentially going on. DC, they just had such a rapid change of direction, and all the drama and stuff that was behind the scenes, and gosh, we're still finding out more details about that now, but that clearly has fed both sides, and particularly those toxic fans, they're all zealots, and they want to cherry pick or take whatever information sort of fits their confirmation bias and then just run with it. And clearly there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we never hear about.
Yeah.
So, a great example would be we heard the Zack Snyder version of the film was unwatchable years ago, and that's what happened before Whedon came in. And I've been critical of Snyder's DC stuff in the past, but there's some solid stuff there. But now we find out they told him, no, you have to cut what you have down to 2 hours. Well, sometimes you can't do that. You can't cram stuff into there. So it becomes unclear on, where fault lies and how this goes. And obviously money always plays into this, and that's not something people really want to talk about, but that's the name of the game for the studios. We just don't know. And I think it causes a lot of those people, because they don't quite get it all, to be a little frustrated.
Yeah.
And, and seek a villain. We're superhero fans. We're always looking for the villain.
And to stay on track with DC a little bit, but to kind of sidestep, Mainframe Comic Con had an event, a virtual event, where they reunited the cast of the animated Justice League series. And I think just from our back and forth on Twitter that the Justice League reunion is kind of a project that's near and dear to my heart. There's hashtags for it, groups dedicated to it. And they had said before, I guess someone had mentioned to Susan Eisenberg that you need to stop tweeting at Warner Brothers about this because they're getting angry, which kind of struck me as odd, because these same people are tweeting release the Snyder Cut, and they're calling Warner Brothers switchboards on a daily basis, and they made it happen. I feel like the Justice League reunion crowd that wants Andrea Romano back for a film with this cast is not anywhere near the intensity of the Snyder Cut people, and yet they're being told to stand down, which strikes me as odd. What do you make of all that?
We're going to pause right there. We'll take our last break, come back and wrap things up with Louis Spahn of CB Nostalgia, Comic Book Nostalgia. Please stand by.
Great hair. May the force be with you. This is Susan Eisenberg, voiceover actress, and you are listening to Geek to Me Radio.
And we're back here for the last segment on Geek to Me Radio. Chatting for this last segment here with Louis Spahn of Comic Book Nostalgia, great YouTube channel. One of my Twitter buddies from way back, one of the first people we kind of mutually followed each other. Great guy with a lot of great content. And before we took that last break, we asked him his thoughts on the whole Snyder Cut movement and how that kind of rolls into a possible hashtag JL reunion for the Justice League animated series.
Well, I think the Snyder Cut thing is a little complicated. I actually do think we're going to get the Justice League reunion at some point, because it's not very expensive and there's a fairly high demand. When you look back in time on the Snyder Cut thing, 2 years ago we were told the AT&T switchboard was told to treat them like crank callers. So, like I said, I think there's been some sort of change in leadership. So maybe that assertion that she was upsetting people, we have to weigh it against that, during when and where. I also think the return on investment on animation is so much different than movies that, maybe they're tolerant of some things in a different way than others. We talk about we talk about this sometimes with comics and comic fans, comparing them to movies and how much money they make. And obviously those decisions are made sort of gearing towards that. So I think that's a big part of it. Young Justice got a reunion, and it got a reunion based on hashtags and people squealing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did probably 200 Reasons to Renew Young Justice run for a long time and did one every day. Or the history. They do those great dates on that show where they show you the date. So on this date in Young Justice history. And that's what I think pushed it over the top. So I don't, maybe the thing with Susan's, or maybe the thing with Justice League Reunion is the cast is pretty high-end voice cast. They're all well-known. Maybe it's an expense thing. I don't know, but I surely want to see it. And it's probably one of the greatest cartoons ever.
Yeah. Yeah, between the stories, Dwayne McDuffie was a genius. A lot of the teleplays that he did for those episodes, just absolutely brilliant.
The shows are so important, actually, to my family. Both of my daughters, who are now 17 and 20, some of their earliest memories are actually sitting on my lap watching that cartoon.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Susan will say too, and I've had every single member on the show. Luckily, we've had from Carl to George to Phil and Maria, and they've all said that people stop them, and some people are in their 30s and 40s saying, "Oh my gosh, I love this show." Some people are in their late teens, early 20s, say, "Oh, my mom and dad watched this show, and they watched it with me." So there's entire generations who have loved that show. So it'd be great if we could get something, and Andrea Romano has said she will come out of retirement to direct it, which is huge. And the way the actors in that show revere Andrea, rightfully so, I think they would jump at the chance to do it again. They've all said as much.
Well, I think you hit the key right there. It's all the actors. And, when you have those sort of cohesive teams of people that really seem to be having a good time, it is sort of amazing how easy it is to get them back together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's hope that happens. Hashtag JL Reunion for their next year will actually be the 20th anniversary of the show's premiere, which is incredible to think about.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm hoping to give us out some new material. Maybe the DVD set or maybe some extras. There's got to be something out there we haven't seen.
I'm sure. And the DC Universe had those relaunch of the figures that they remolded of the original 7 along with Aquaman. So maybe they could do a huge package like that. I know I would drop my money immediately if they gave us something like that.
Hashtag Justice Lords.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be amazing.
Everybody would want that.
And so we talked at the beginning about your YouTube channel. Very impressive. Like I said, you churn out videos. It feels like every 10 minutes you've got a new one out on a different subject, different topic. Talk a little bit about your channel. Tell people where they can find it and what type of stuff that you do.
Okay. Well, over on Twitter and YouTube, I'm at Comic Book Nostalgia. And, the idea of starting the channel originally was the good vibe you get from all this stuff. We try to keep it really positive. I always like to joke the channel is supposed to feel like Saturday morning cartoons and smell like cereal. Like when you were a little kid, and
Yes.
That's kind of how we try to keep it. I still look at all the more grown up content like The Boys and Titans and stuff, but we want it to feel that way. Everything, like you said, can be toxic and negative, and I'm purposefully trying to steer away from all that. I covered a lot of news, and finally it's coming at us pretty frequently again, which is sort of nice. And we try to veer off a little bit. I've been doing a lot of coverage of various shows. Like Stargirl was pretty great and had a lot of neat stuff. And then a lot of the news from DC Fandome has been great. And I also do a lot of coverage of animation, superhero animation, obviously. But DC is churning out some great stuff, and just boom, boom, boom. Long Halloween next year is going to be spectacular. So that's all. That's the kind of stuff that we like to look at because it's all feel good and it stays away from some of the negative vibes that we were talking about. And that's why we do this, right? It's all about the good vibes and the good guys, and that's what gravitates me to it personally.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like you said, not to keep this all about DC animation, but yeah, between Superman Red Sun and we've got the new one that James DeMatteis just put out with Deathstroke, Knights and Dragons, and then we've got Man of Tomorrow coming up soon, and you mentioned Long Halloween. So, and then Death in the Family is a choose-your-own-adventure like Bandersnatch type thing. So they're killing it.
Yeah, I really hope the Death in the Family does well. Actually, the predecessor, Under the Red Hood, was the first Blu-ray that I ever bought. And actually, to do a video that I did about the death of Jason Todd, and I needed some clips from it. And so I'm going to buy this one on Blu-ray too. I hope that works. I really do. That will be something that would just be so great. Even if it's just like a 35-minute tale, but I've got 3 or 4 variations of the same 35-minute tale, that's great.
As long as I don't have to dial a 900 number this time, that's all I ask. See if he lives or dies. But Louis, I appreciate your coming on and chatting DC. Good luck with your channel. The YouTube thing is blowing up for you, and you've been doing a fantastic job. And again, it's at CB Nostalgia on Twitter. Same on Instagram?
Same on Instagram, and Comic Book Nostalgia on YouTube.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, man. Thanks for having me.